Have you ever noticed that everything starts falling into place exactly when you finally stop worrying? It's not a coincidence. Someone gets a promotion right when they stop obsessing over it. The person you're into responds just as you decide to move on. That dream job, the one that seemed impossible, pops up on the day you barely put in any effort. This isn't magic. It's human behavior. The world responds differently when you let go of control. And yes, it goes against everything you were taught growing up. Ever tried to fall asleep knowing you have to wake up early, and because of that, you couldn't close your eyes all night? Exactly. Welcome to the ironic effect of thinking. Harvard psychologist Daniel Wegner proved it with a simple experiment. He asked participants not to think about a white bear. Result, they thought about it even more. The takeaway? The harder you force your brain to obey a strict command, the more likely it is to do the opposite. This applies to almost everything. Overcontrol is anxiety disguised as planning. You think you're managing the situation, but you're really just ramping up the tension. Picture someone before a big presentation. If they obsess over every detail, tone of voice, outfit, what others might think, what happens? Their speech falters. They start sweating, their mind goes blank. The attempt to be perfect creates the failure they wanted to avoid. It's a common scenario. In psychology, this is explained through Albert Bandura's theory of self-efficacy. People with high self-efficacy trust themselves and act with ease. Those who doubt themselves try to compensate with over-control. The result? A breakdown. And it's not just theory. In 2003, the Journal of Applied Psychology published studies involving sales managers. Those who tried to control every detail, from words to gestures, performed 26% worse than those who prepared but left room for improvisation. Over-control even blocks productivity. Want a closer example? Imagine a guy obsessed with making someone like him. He's constantly texting, forcing conversation, analyzing every message like it's a secret code. What happens? The other person pulls away, not because they're a bad person, but because nobody likes feeling smothered. And the worst part? He's hurting himself, thinking he's showing care. Over-control is like trying to hold sand in a clenched fist. You think you'll keep it all, but you lose it faster. And yes, your brain is to blame, trying to protect you from everything at once, but it overdoes it, and the cost is high. You tense up, get nervous, and lose what you wanted most. See the logic? When effort turns into obsession, the result becomes the opposite of what you intended. Now that the foundation is clear, let's move on to figure out what actually brings results without choking the process. Here we go. You walk into a room full of people. One person talks loudly, tries to seem interesting, over-explains, justifies every word. Another is just there, calm, observant, with a slight smile, not trying to prove anything to anyone. Who draws more attention? The answer's obvious, and it's not just a matter of taste, it's science. In 2012, Harvard psychologist Amy Cuddy conducted research on body language and social perception. She found that people who adopt open, relaxed postures for just 2 minutes before social interactions significantly boost their perceived charisma and confidence. In plain terms, being comfortable in your own skin is more convincing than any rehearsed line. Here's another fact. In an experiment published in the Journal of Research in Personality, participants evaluated videos of job candidates. Those who appeared more relaxed and spontaneous were seen as more competent and reliable, even when their answers were average. Behavior outweighed content. This works in dating, interviews, meetings, even project presentations. People who show up without forceful bravado inspire more trust. The explanation is simple. Our brains perceive emotional stability as a sign of leadership and reliability, while signs of desperation or neediness instinctively push people away. It's survival biology. Want a historical example? Think of Barack Obama during his election campaigns. While other candidates looked like they were pushing slogans with sweat on their brows, Obama spoke as if he'd already won, even if that wasn't the case. His calm tone, slow pace, and lack of pushiness created one impression: this guy's got the situation under control. Now compare that to those who try to impress with every sentence, constantly pushing. The audience feels it. You don't need to be an expert to tell who's confident and who's desperately trying to be liked. In real life, it shows up in small things. Know that person who doesn't reply instantly, doesn't justify themselves, doesn't over-explain? We listen to them more. It's not arrogance, it's confidence. And real confidence attracts. So before you try to seem interesting, take a breath, slow down. Nobody admires someone who tries too hard. The truth is, relaxed energy isn't indifference, it's confidence without the noise. That's what really matters. Done. Now that you see why calmness trumps 1,000 perfect words, let's look at how this affects your productivity under pressure, because things get trickier from here, literally. You know that moment when everything feels too important? You need to deliver, prove you're good enough, and right then you freeze. Your mind goes blank, your voice shakes, everything goes wrong. It's not failure, it's too much pressure. Science has already explained this. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi from the University of Chicago developed the concept of flow state. It's that moment when you're so immersed in what you're doing that everything flows effortlessly. Time vanishes, anxiety fades, and you're at your peak. But here's the catch: this state only comes when your mind is relaxed. When you try too hard, it slips away. A Stanford University study analyzed students solving complex tasks under varying levels of pressure. Those under high pressure performed up to 40% worse than those in a calmer setting. Stress didn't motivate them, it paralyzed them. It happens to athletes too. At the Tokyo Olympics, Simone Biles, one of the greatest gymnasts ever, withdrew from several events, not due to physical injury, but because of a mental block caused by overwhelming expectations. And she's not alone. Research shows that the so-called choking under pressure effect is common among elite athletes, musicians, speakers, and surgeons. The more a situation feels like all or nothing, the higher the risk of failure. The same logic applies in corporate settings. In a Gallup survey of over 30,000 professionals, 67% of employees working under overly rigid goals reported a drop in their work quality. It's not a lack of talent, it's suffocation from poorly managed goals and constant pressure to perform. Want a real-world example of how this works? Picture a musician trying to write the next big hit. If they sit down and say, "I'm going to write a song that'll change my career," they'll likely produce something bland and soulless. But if they just play, experiment, have fun, something brilliant might emerge. That's how Billie Eilish wrote Bad Guy in a single day. No plan, no pressure, just flow. The point is clear: too much pressure turns talent into tension. When you try too hard, you freeze. The fear of messing up drowns out your skill. You stop creating, improvising, responding naturally, and that's when your productivity crashes. So next time you catch yourself aiming for perfection, maybe it's time to mess up a little. Relax, let go of the outcome. Because, oddly enough, that's when it starts to happen. Now that you see pressure does more harm than good, the question is, how do you act without falling into this trap? Because doing nothing isn't an option either. Let's be clear, stopping the pressure doesn't mean sitting idle, waiting for a miracle. The problem isn't action, it's action driven by desperation. There's a huge difference between purposeful action and anxious flailing, and that difference is everything. Look at the business world. Startups following Eric Ries's lean startup model work like this. They test quickly, make small mistakes, learn and adjust. They don't bet everything on one idea. They move, but smartly. And here's the kicker. The ones that grow the most aren't the ones planning the most, but the ones adapting the fastest. There's action, but no attachment to the original plan, no pressure for results. They move to the rhythm the market sets. Now compare that to a guy who decides to start a business and goes all in without testing a single sale. He overdoes it, betting on it has to work, instead of let's see how it goes. And when it fails, he crashes because he left no room to pivot. In practice, this is called misaligned action. It's when you act out of fear, not clarity. Fear of losing, falling behind, not being accepted. And fear makes terrible decisions. In behavioral psychology, this is known as an external locus of control. People with this mindset try to control what's beyond their power: other people, outcomes, the future. The result? Chronic disappointment. Want another example? Picture a salesperson pushing a product the client clearly doesn't need. They insist, pressure, rush, and the client walks away. A good salesperson first understands the client's problem, listens, tailors the offer. They act strategically, not desperately. Result? A closed deal. It's the same in relationships. When you try to make someone love you, you get rejection. But when you just be yourself without a script or pressure, you give the other person a chance to genuinely connect. You act lightly, without forcing. Harvard Business Review data shows that leaders who make decisions based on intuition, backed by experience, have a 50% higher chance of success than those rigidly sticking to a preset plan, even with more data. Why? Because they know how to adjust course. They don't keep pushing a failing strategy. They sense the moment and respond. Ultimately, the difference between those who move forward and those who burn out isn't how much they do, it's the state they do it from. Those who act with clarity, presence, and flexibility get results. Those who act with anxiety, attachment, and rigidity burn out. So, no, it's not about doing less. It's about doing it right, acting with direction, not panic. Letting go of control doesn't mean retreating to a mountain monastery, becoming a cynic, pretending you don't care, or waiting for the universe to sort it out. It's not about giving up, it's about stopping the dead weight. And yes, it can be done practically, systematically, even scientifically. First, stop assuming every thought is absolute truth. One cornerstone of cognitive behavioral therapy, used for decades in clinical and corporate settings, is called reframing or cognitive restructuring. Simply put, you notice an automatic thought, check its logic, and replace it with a more useful one. It's straightforward but effective. Instead of, "I bombed that presentation, I'm getting fired," you ask, "Is this a fact or just fear blown up by the moment's stress?" And it works. A study in the journal Cognitive Therapy and Research showed that patients who mastered reframing reduced stress and anxiety by up to 60% in just 6 weeks. Another tool, strategic journaling. Write for 10 minutes daily about whatever's looping in your head like a broken record. Sounds basic, but it's not. Companies like Google and LinkedIn encourage this among their executives. Why? It helps you see your thoughts from a distance. You stop reacting on autopilot and start noticing patterns. It creates mental space. Want a third technique? Mindfulness, but not in the vague connect with the universe sense, as a real research-backed practice from Harvard Medical School. 8 weeks of focused practice, 10 minutes a day, and participants showed a noticeable drop in amygdala activity, the brain region tied to fear and reactivity. Less panic, more clarity. Look at top athletes. Novak Djokovic, for instance, credits part of his success to daily meditation and mindful breathing. Not because he's gone mystic, but because he's learned not to let the outcome control him. He steps onto the court to play the point, not to win the tournament before serving. If it works for one of the world's greatest tennis players, it'll work for you before a meeting, tough conversation, or big decision. Letting go is a skill, and like any skill, it can be trained. You just need the right tools, and to stop thinking emotional control comes from willpower. It doesn't. It comes from process, repetition, and technique. Here's the harsh truth. Most real breakthroughs in life happen not when you're controlling everything, but when you stop trying to control everything. And it's not random, it's a pattern backed by facts. In 1995, Steve Jobs was fired from his own company, Apple. He could have clung on, fought for his seat, drowned in obsession. Instead, he let go, founded Next, and bought Pixar. Both became so successful that Apple invited him back. Result, he returned and turned Apple into a tech giant. Another example, J.K. Rowling. Before Harry Potter, she was a single mom, unemployed, living on welfare. When she wrote her first book, she got 7 rejections from publishers, 8 if you count her own moment of nearly giving up. But she kept going, not because she was trying to prove anything anymore, she wrote, because she couldn't not write. Everything else followed. What do these stories show? Obsessing over controlling the outcome isn't just useless, it gets in the way. Jobs created something great only when he stepped outside the script. Rowling found her voice only when she stopped seeking permission. And this applies to me, you, and anyone who's ever felt like they're carrying the world. A 2017 Columbia Business School study showed that people with high cognitive autonomy, those who let go of what they can't control and focus on what they can do here and now, are 31% more likely to make good decisions under pressure. Not because they're smarter, but because their minds aren't bogged down trying to predict the future. Here's the crux. When you let go, you don't switch off. You just stop wasting energy on what's not moving and start flowing with what is. It sounds like cheap poetry, but it's pure mental engineering. In the long run, letting go makes you lighter, more creative, more open to the unexpected. And it's not some calendar quote philosophy, it's a strategy. Because someone stuck on a rigid plan misses new possibilities. They're always reacting, not creating. So if you want more results and more peace, it's not about pushing harder. It's about choosing more precisely where to aim your effort. And now comes real life, the part where you decide to apply this or keep running in circles, because trying to control everything feels effective until you realize you're stuck. And then when you finally let go, guess what? Things start moving.